Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film, The Wind Rises. Is the final film from Hayao Miyazaki, the animation great Jiro Horikoshi, who was the designer of the Mitsubishi A5M and the Mitsubishi A6M0, which were used as fighter planes in World War II by the Japanese military. And he was famous for making those planes and that were used in Pearl Harbor and various kamikaze missions. But this isn't really about what those planes were used for. This is for his love of flight and how he was obsessed with making those planes and what drove him to make those planes and why it meant so much to him. He meets the love of his life named Nieko. It is entirely fictionalized. Jiro Horikoshi was a real person, but everything about his personal life was completely made up in a manga which is based on a short story. So it shows his determination as he tries to get the planes he wants to make made, as he goes through the ranks in Mitsubishi as they are trying to get the government contracts, the military contracts they need to be able to make the planes for the military. Throughout his life, he keeps having fantasies with the Italian aircraft designer Gianni Caproni, where he tells him about life and gives him kind of philosophical musings about the creative world and why he likes to make aircrafts, and showing the obsession of the creative process and how it impacts someone who has the drive to do things creatively and is so inspired the way Jiro was. This film is Hayao Miyazaki's last film, and you can tell throughout it. Even the fantasy person that Jiro talks to throughout his life, Gianni Caproni, his company designed the aircraft that Studio Ghibli is named after. Jiro's obsession with making aircrafts, and Hayao Miyazaki has for a long time had a obsession with flight, whether it's Porco Rosso or Kiki's Delivery Service or Nausicaa. He's always had a thing with flight and airplanes. I kind of thought that was why he wanted to make a film like this, and it actually, because of his obsession with making these great films, the artistry is so perfect in all his films and the storytelling is so classical and so perfectly made. And then I read a thing about how he wanted to make this film not only because of his love of flight, but because he heard this quote from the real Jiro that said all he wanted to do was make something beautiful. Judging from this film, that was really at the core of the character. Jiro really wanted to make an amazing plane. He was obsessed with airplane designers, and he always wanted to be able to say he was part of that. And I think Hayao Miyazaki had those dreams as well. Now it's crazy to think about because he is the greatest animation director living right now, that he wanted to be up there with the greats. And I thought when I was watching this, is Gianni supposed to represent someone else? But when I found out it was just supposed to be Gianni, and he keeps talking to him about how artists just need to be concerned with making something well made and making something beautiful. They shouldn't be concerned with the money or the war that's going on or the context that they will be put upon. They should just be making a really fine piece of art. And what's interesting is when I think of Miyazaki's work, is I never think of it in the historical context of its time. I think animation can do that a lot, especially like older Disney films. We're kind of losing that now since we like to be so referential. But I think when animation is done right and done well, there's a universal quality where there's really no date you can even put on it, even though there is an actual date, but it doesn't really feel that way. It feels like it could have been made any time. He's more concerned with making a really refined, well-made piece of filmmaking from a great storyteller as well as a great director. And this film isn't made in his usual style. There's really no fantasy about it. I mean, it's not really telling a true life story, but it's done in a more realistic tone. It's not done in really a straightforward manner. It both feels very Japanese and very European. It feels very lyrical and episodic and leisurely all at the same time. There's no attention to detail with the dates, but it all works out perfectly like a master filmmaker. And then when he keeps going with Gianni, having his little philosophical airplane talks, which kind of mirror what's going on, because as Gianni's more pro at what he's doing, Jiro is more pro at what he's doing. I guess it kind of shows someone looking at where they are and seeing someone who they admire and trying to compare themselves to it, and imagining that scenario and imagining that talk they would have. The idea that thinking Miyazaki would be in that place, and a lot of the things he says to him, like artists have a good 10 years and then that's it. And I think when I look at this film, I think about how Miyazaki made a film that talks about how there's a certain point where you have to let go and let it end and just be proud of your work, as Jiro is. It shows a very contemplative filmmaker, kind of an old man contemplating on his life through his storytelling. It's one thing to go out on your laurels, and he knows how to make a Hayao Miyazaki film. I think Ponyo did that very well, where he's very much doing the kind of film we're used to from him. And now I love Ponyo. I think it's a great movie. But he didn't want to just go out that way. He wanted to really come out with a film that was different and really challenge himself on the way out. It goes without saying this is the best animated film I've seen this year. It's definitely one of the best films I've seen this year. And it's probably the best Hayao Miyazaki film I've seen since Spirited Away. I'm not gonna say it's better than Spirited Away, because Spirited Away is a classic, but I like it a lot more than both Howl's Moving Castle and Ponyo. It kind of reminds me of From Up on Poppy Hill in a way. It seems like he wants Studio Ghibli to get away from just doing fantasy, which I love, and that's how I got into Studio Ghibli, and I think that's how we all got into Studio Ghibli, through that and through Totoro and through Porco Rosso and Kiki's Delivery Service. And those are amazing films, whether they're about fantasy or not. They have a really good sense of character. But it feels like he almost doesn't want to go down the road that everyone else is going. He's never done a sequel. He takes his time with his films. He really wants them to be perfect, and they always have a sense of beauty. I always feel a sense of tranquility when I leave them. I'm always surprised where he'll go next, whether I like it or not, but this was probably the most surprised I've been since I saw Spirited Away. It's sad to see him go, but I love seeing him go in such an amazing way, in a way that makes me romanticize him, but it also makes me humanize him at the same time. And I think this film does that with Jiro, where it definitely romanticizes him. There's sometimes lines of dialogue where I'm like, I don't know if people really talk like that, more so than I've seen in any of his films. Jiro, like any episodic epic, you need someone like a through line, like a person for you as an audience member to really go in with, and Jiro is perfect for that. Even though he's kind of antisocial and weird and is talking about how fish bones relate to aircraft and all these things, is really a person you side with, because you know he has that determination, he has that heart, and he has this love for something. I don't think it really matters to him who wants the aircraft. He just wants to make a beautiful aircraft. When you see the plane that he's been working on, and you see it with its unique wings, and you see it run at the end of the film, it's like, yeah, he did it. He got to be, like, I felt that sense of accomplishment. I almost felt like I was with him. I was with this struggle. I went with him. I really sided with him, and I just thought about how classical Miyazaki was and how I used to get that from old Hollywood films. And this felt more classically Hollywood. Like, I'm always talking about how films like this is like how certain films are like older Hollywood films, but for now. And this didn't feel that way to me. It felt exactly like one of those structures in an amazing way. And when that plane flies, I felt like he finally accomplished the thing that he needed to his whole life. He was there with his idols. It felt a sense of an accomplishment, and that he earned it, and he worked very hard for it. And I just love that. I love the arcs that Hayao Miyazaki puts me on with these characters. There's always such a sensational arc. I always feel like I've really been through something, like I've really grown with the characters, like they're my friends. I was thinking about, on my way to the movie, and a lot actually this week, was like, wow, Totoro. I remember when I loved Totoro and no one in America knew who he was. And now most people on the internet know who Totoro is and put him on all these different mashup t-shirts, and it matters so much to so many different things. And it's because you really feel with Totoro. You really feel with those characters. You grow attached to those characters in a Hayao Miyazaki film more than I can think of any director right now. It felt so universal when he was thinking about his fiance and his wife, who would become his wife, or at least in this story. I couldn't find out who his real wife was, or if he was married. When things would happen to her, I would think about, what if something would happen to my own wife, and what that reality would be like, and I was really taken there. And Hayao Miyazaki is one of the greatest animation directors there ever will be, and certainly in my lifetime there ever was. I hope for someone at some point he can be their Gianni Caprini and mentor them in the way that he did to Jiro in this film. I'm sad to see him go, but like at the end of the film where he says how he regrets that these planes cause lots of death, and none of the planes as they went off, and I'm assuming they mean Pearl Harbor, but I don't know, ever came back and caused so much death. It does feel like an old man reflecting back, almost like, you know, retiring and going off and living off peacefully, almost as if he is already going into heaven. Jiro, as the quote says, he just wanted to make things that were beautiful, and I think Hayao Miyazaki definitely accomplished that. So if you have seen The Wind Rises and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And as I said in the review, this was a review for the Japanese version with subtitles. At the time I shot this review, the dubbed English version has not been released. I think I will probably review that one as well when it comes out. So yeah.